We're on.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Brentwood Inspired Living Center, our Sunday celebration service. I am TJ Woodward. If you don't know me, I'm filling in for Amy, although we know no one can really fill in for Amy because she's such an incredible soul, an incredible being. She's at a workshop today, so the four of us have agreed to step in, and we are so grateful. Today, my message is going to be the freedom of spirit, and our theme for the month of January is freedom from fear. And I've been reflecting on that and really leaning into the importance of that right now. And if you're anything like me, you have maybe unplugged or detoxed from the media, or maybe you have not, but boy, are they wanting us to be afraid right now. And so at Brentwood Inspired Living Center, we honor that and also recognize that we want to be a voice for something greater and something different than that. So this month, we're really exploring what freedom from fear looks like. And as I said, my talk will be the freedom of spirit. We have a workshop at 11:30. Please join us. And that workshop I'll be facilitating, and that is From Fear to Freedom, What's Required. So please join us for that. We are so blessed today to have Asher Stern here as our musician. Asher, welcome. We're so grateful for you. And we're happy you're safe in Santa Cruz. The waves have been kicking up, and Mother Nature's been letting us know that she's very much alive, and so are we. We have Ron with us, our incredible and wonderful Ron, sharing the reading today. And Jan is stepping up and doing something really amazing. She is going to be reading your comments, your questions. As I say, comments, questions, smart remarks, it's all welcome. Jan is going to be managing that. And what a gift, right? What a gift for us to be able to say yes to this incredible community. And before I turn it over to Jan, if you're here watching right now, please, in the chat bar, in the chat room, in the chat, please let us know where you're watching from. Jan's going to acknowledge you in a moment. I wanted to say a word before we begin about my experience of this incredible community, Brentwood Inspired Living Center. It's been several years. I'm going to guess 5. Time is an interesting thing, but I'm going to guess about 5 years ago, I walked into Brentwood for the first time. And I remember the feeling, the sensation of love coming toward me and from me, and this beautiful blending. And I remember meeting Amy for the first time, and so many of you. And I want to acknowledge that the frequency of love is more powerful than any fear that exists on planet Earth and beyond. And Brentwood Inspired Living Center is a beacon of that love. I've always felt it, and I'm so grateful for this community. So with that, I want to turn it to Jan. Jan is going to let us know who is watching, who is with us. In this time on planet Earth, we're having to become really creative about what community looks like. So Jan, I'm turning it to you.
Okay. It's so great to have you here, TJ. And this is an experience, a real experience for me. And it's wonderful that you're right here flowing back and forth. So you're supporting me in my newest of many experiences. So I want to say hi to Robin. Actually, Robin is sitting right here next to me. And so I'm using her chat on her computer rather than trying to figure out the Facebook on my phone, which, Amy just does this and looks at her phone, and it's just miraculous. Well, so I'm using Robin's computer, and I want to say, Robin says, good morning from California. Blessed to be here. And it's wonderful to have her here supporting me. And also Karen's here. Hi, Karen. And David, thank you. Good morning. He says good morning to TJ and to me. And John says, good morning. Love you, TJ and Jan. So that's wonderful to feel so blessed. It's new. This is a really exciting experience for all of us. We're moving forward here. And then Pat's here. Oh, Pat says, yes, incredible community. And she says, hi to you, TJ. And Deborah Mayer from San Francisco. Hey.
Hi, Deborah.
Yay. And Florence, good morning, everyone. So those are the people that I can see so far who have responded or signed in on chat. And be sure you do that so that we can all know who's here, our community, we're all together. So back to you, TJ.
Thank you,
That's
Jan, and
so
thank you,
far.
everyone. If you're so technologically inclined, go ahead and share this on your wall as well and invite people to join us this morning. You know, consciousness is so powerful, and we've come together this morning to celebrate consciousness, to celebrate the love that we are, and recognize that we make a profound difference on planet Earth simply by being the frequency of love. So we're going to start with our mission statement, and I'll read it, and anyone that's on this Zoom can read along, and anyone at home, you can also read along. We are an open, heart-centered spiritual community, honoring the one presence within us. We welcome all to connect, grow, and expand in wisdom, compassion, and love. And so it is. Beautiful. Okay, we're going to turn it over to Asher now. Asher is going to lead us in our community song. This is going to be a mantra, and it's Om Mani Padme Hum, one of my favorites. So Asher, I'm turning it to you.
All right, thank you. Good morning. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum.
Wow, thank you so much, Asher, for that. Just feeling into the energy of that powerful mantra. Thank you for that. Beautiful.
You're welcome.
Ron, I'm turning it over to you now for our inspirational reading. Ron.
Thank you, TJ. Good morning, everyone. And as TJ indicated, this month is about freedom from fear. So I'm going to share a couple of excerpts from Eckhart Tolle, and he talks about overcoming fear. Eckhart says that the psychological mental condition of fear is divorced from any concrete and true immediate danger. Let me say that again. The psychological condition of fear is divorced from any concrete and true immediate danger. He says that when we identify with ego, we will always have some degree of fear. Sometimes we identify this fear consciously, but many other times it is an unconscious presence that can take such forms as anxiety, anger, worry, or hatred even. The first step to overcome fear is to grow in our awareness of the thoughts we believe produce the fear. So growing that awareness, shining the light of awareness on the thoughts that tend to create fear in us. Chances are we are projecting ideas into the future, creating scenarios about things that may go wrong in the future, essentially catastrophizing. The solution is to step back into a growing awareness and understanding that these stories, these narratives are always worse than the reality we actually exist within. Most of the time, there is nothing present in the now that actually feels threatening. Even when negative situations arise in our life, our mental stories about them are always worse than the actual event itself. Additionally, Eckhart says that one of the best ways to center ourselves is to practice taking conscious breaths. So let's take a conscious breath together right now. Breathing in, holding it, and then releasing it slowly and fully. The breath, he says, may not release all the fear in 1 second, but it will always start us down the path towards release and begin to weaken the grip that fear has and our ego identification has. In this way, we can avoid getting lost in undue suffering. So be observant and vigilant. Grow in awareness for any kind of defensiveness within ourselves. Eckhart asks, what are we defending? We are essentially defending an illusory identity, an image in our minds, a fictitious entity. By making this pattern conscious, by consciously breathing, witnessing, and growing in our awareness of our thoughts, we begin disidentifying from the ego. In the light of our consciousness, the unconscious patterns can begin to recede and dissolve. Eckhart concludes that this is the end of all arguments and power games, which are so corrosive to relationships. Power over others is weakness disguised as strength. True power is spaciously within us, and it is available to us always in the now. And so it is.
And so it is. Wow. What a powerful reading. Thank you, Ron. Wow. Power over others is always weakness in disguise. That is just, I'm inviting us for this moment to reflect on that as we see the earth drama right now being played out, maybe in our own lives and in the world, and recognize this, what Ron has shared, what Eckhart Tolle has shared, that we have a choice. Albeit sometimes unconscious, we're choosing how we participate in the world. So thank you for that. So beautiful. And obviously we'll be talking more about that when I talk about the freedom of spirit in a while. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Asher for another song. Asher, take it away. Thank you so much again for your presence, your talent, and being here with our community this morning.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you. This one's called Choices. I wasn't going to play it first, but after what you just said, I was like, all right, I got to play this one. Because it is, in my experience, when I'm faced with my darkness and my light, I always have a choice of which wolf to feed, so to speak. So how long will it take you to decide what you're gonna do? Right now is the moment where you will choose your destiny. It's this way or that way. Which way will it be? Red or want to be? Decide, make up your mind. Whatever you do is fine. You're okay. You're okay. Life is all about how choices. You can run free or you can take the courses. Take a separate way to spend your life saving other people. We're all equal, yeah. In our confusion, we're using the system to feel safe. We think we need this and we think we need that, so we'll just take this and we'll just take that. Believe it or not, all we really need is love. All we really need is, believe it or not, all we really need is love. All we really need is love, yeah. Love, yeah. Love, yeah. Love, yeah. Love. Life's all about how choices. You can run free or you can take the courses. Take a separate way to spend your life saving other people. people, we're all equal, yeah, yeah. And our worthiness of happiness and abundance, it's so clear. It's not about a water size or about the carbon drive. It's not about the phone we have, so we can call the cab to take us far from where we are. It's closer to the stars, the stars are within each of us, no matter where we are. Stars are spirit, can you hear it? It's all so clear now, can't you see? The stars are light, they shine so bright in all of our lives. We got choices, we got forces, let's use them to give ourselves what we need. Life is all about choices. You can run free or you can take the courses. You can dig yourself a grave, spend your life to saving other people. We're all equal, yeah, yeah.
Wow, thank you, thank you, thank you, Asher. That was the perfect song, of course. Incredible. Before I turn it over to Ron for our prosperity celebration and blessing, I want to turn it back over to Jan and just check in. I feel like I'm live, live on a newscast. Jan, let's check in from you in the studio. What's happening with the comments and the questions?
I know, it's fun.
Yeah, Jan, what are people saying?
It's really funny. I mean, it's funny. I feel like that's live newscast too. Okay, so I just wanted to say Kathy's here, and Paris is here, and Luinda, and Robin said, Asher, when you did the Omnipod, she said that was a beautiful song. It took me to a deep, deep level. So real gratitude for that song and for your presence. Kathy said she didn't have any sound, and now she has sound, which is good. And people were saying that, TJ, that you have it on speaker view, so that like sometimes I think it must depend on the person themselves and their settings, because when you have it on speaker view, Nancy was saying she could only see one person, you at a time. And anyway, sometimes people can see everybody on the screen. So I think that has to do with their own settings, doesn't it?
It
Yeah.
could be a little of both. Right now, they should be able to see all four of us.
Right. They should be able to see all four of us. Exactly. So let's see. What am I doing here? I'm looking at the chats, and Katie is here, and she said, grateful for this special opportunity to be with Inspired Living Center. And we're happy to have you here, Katie. We love having you here. And Jenny says, good morning. And let's see. Robin says, Ron, growing in awareness. Perfect message today. Thank you so much. There we go. Okay, back to you, TJ.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jan. Okay, let's go to Ron now for our prosperity celebration and blessing.
All right. Thank you, TJ. Thank you, Asher, for that song. It felt wonderful. Thank you. So I'm now going to offer the prayer of plenitude and gratitude. So let us enter into stillness and open our breath, our minds, and our hearts, breathing in and breathing out, letting go and letting be, letting go of all undue anxieties, concerns, worries, and distractions, and bringing ourselves more fully into the here and now, touching into sacred breath and sacred stillness. Let us affirm and confirm our interconnectedness and oneness with all that is, with the mystery of life, with the beauty of creation, with the essential beingness that we are. For in this soulful beingness lives the essential qualities of wisdom, peace, love, kindness, compassion, creativity, joy, and harmony, all of which we truly are in our essence. We are awakening to and embodying graciously and gratefully these ultimate truths. We acknowledge and accept that we are living under extraordinary circumstances, challenges, and opportunities. Pronounced periods of breakdowns, breakthroughs, releases, and renewals. We realize more and more our awakening, our quickening into a transformation of consciousness. We are consciously co-creating and birthing with the web of life, an emerging paradigm in consciousness born of love. And we are especially grateful for the conscious community that we are birthing, celebrating, sharing with each other and the world. All of this is done, and we give heart-centered thanks. We bless and release this prayer into the ethers, into the great mystery, knowing that Spirit unfolds and reveals its perfect, mysterious work, all with a sense of divine order, nowness, and oneness. It is done, and so it is. And for this plenitude of spirit, we truly give heart-centered thanks.
Wow. Thank you, Ron, for that. I can feel the frequency of that. Thank you for all that you bring to this incredible community in your wisdom and in your present and in your essential beingness. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going back to Ash.
I have a couple of announcements.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Ron.
A couple of announcements. And first of all, as we know, we lost a dear friend, Don Huntington. And so we're going to have a celebration of Don Huntington's life. It will be on Monday, January 31st. Monday, January 31st at 11 o'clock. It will be in the city of Byron, and the venue is called Campos Vineyards. Campos Vineyards is on 3501 Byron Road, once again in Byron at 11 o'clock. I'm sure we'll post that information. We'll send it out on various occasions so that people are aware, and of course, spread the word. The family asks that face masks are required and that no food will be served. And as we know, our community continues to meet virtually during this month of January on Facebook Live for our Sunday services, for our workshops that may follow, such as today with TJ at 11:30, and you'll find that on our after service Zoom link. Please join us, all are welcome. Our first in-person Sunday service in nearly 2 years, wow, 2 years already, will be on Sunday, February 6th at the Nick Rodriguez Community Center. That'll be Sunday, February 6th at 10 o'clock. The Nick Rodriguez Community Center, for those that don't know, is on 415 West 2nd Street in downtown Antioch, facing the river. The service begins at 10, will go into 11:15, and we're going to have a very important annual meeting that'll be conducted at 11:30 to 12:30. And Amy will be the featured speaker for our Sunday service. So please, if you can make it, please join us. Wednesday, January 19th, this coming Wednesday is our weekly recycling and loaves and fishes donation. So of course, we're going to have Nancy and Florence there that will warmly greet us and receive whatever you have in terms of donations and recyclables. They'll be there from 10:30 to 12, and it's going to be where our center physically was located before on 50 Sand Creek Road in the parking lot. Remember to check out our weekly connection announcements and updates, which are sent out, disseminated every Wednesday afternoon. And there you'll hear about upcoming speakers, musicians, and events that may be available. And lastly, Carol Hansen Gray has been very generously offering her Journey to an Open Heart series, which when we purchase 40% is generously given back to our community. So we're thankful to Carol for that generosity. And if you would like to take an opportunity to further work on releasing fear, that is kind of the heart of what Carol presents in her videos. So please feel free to partake of that. And so have a wonderful day today. and a beautiful week. And thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you so much for that and all the wonderful happenings that this community is so vibrant in participating in. Okay, Asher, turning it back to you for our last song.
All right, this one's original called Grateful and Happy. And the reason I chose this song is I always try to pick something that's along with the theme, you know. And although I don't have a song about freedom, I do believe that when I'm faced with my fears, I have the choice to, you know, focus on that or otherwise. And when I try to face, you know, towards love, I find gratitude is a great way towards that, you know, just searching for things I love. And it actually literally took me out of a place of wanting to end my life, practicing gratitude, making a journal. So that's why I chose this song, Grateful and Happy. Well, not all that you see you should believe. Well, not everything is quite as it seems. Beginning now you can see truth, it's clear. And if it's meant to be, it will only be coming to you when you are free. Now from the outside, it looks like I'm giving up my dreams. Because I'm not doing the things that I should be doing. Well, I work so hard and giving up so much. Well, I'm not exactly free when I am not happy. So gotta make a change. I'm gonna make a change. Whoa, oh, I'm gonna make a change. Gotta make a change. Whoa, oh, I'm gonna make a change. It up, pack the stuff. I'll be heading down a new road. My mind gets racing, heart is pacing. At this rate, I will be getting old real soon. One by one, things pile up. Instead of working, I'll raise my cup and say cheers to all of the love that's around. I say cheers, I say cheers, I say cheers. I say cheers, I say cheers, I say cheers. I'll say cheers. So it's a new day today, and I've decided to make it count. Whether I'm busy or lazy, I'm gonna feel proud. Because I'm doing what I want, and that should be enough somehow. Whether it's rain or shine, I'll be feeling alright because it's my time. Well, I'm not exactly free when I am not happy. I don't want to feel sad, so I'm gonna feel glad. I just want to be free, so I will feel grateful and happy. Oh yes, I'm grateful and happy. Oh now I'm grateful and happy. Oh yes, I'm grateful and happy. Oh now I'm grateful and I'm happy. Grateful, I'm happy. I'm grateful, I'm happy. Oh, 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 oh,
Wow, thank you so much for that, Asher. I love that your dog chimed in. I'm assuming that's your dog that was saying thank you for that incredible song. I loved it.
He's outside with two pane windows. Yes, that's
Oh,
what.
perfect. Yes. Oh, wow. I love it. Thank you for that incredible song. And thank you, Ron and Asher, both of you. I know you're signing off now. Thank you both for participating.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank
Hold
you.
off a minute, TJ. Let me give accolades to both Ron and from the chat and Asher. So I just before they sign off, I just wanted to say that Jennifer had trouble connecting at first, but now she's on with us, and she says thanks to TJ and to Asher and to Ron for being here. And Bob's here, and Jennifer said beautiful prayer, Ron, prayer of plenitude. I really felt the power of your prayer. And Dave is saying thanks to Asher and Ron. And let's see, Jennifer said perfect song, Asher. Love the lyrics. Thank you for that. Bonnie's here. See if I missed anybody. Dave's here, and he can see all four of us. That's good to know. We're halfway through. Yay. Okay, so thank you guys. It's wonderful to have three men and one of me here today.
Thank you both so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
And I'm
Bye-bye.
turning it back over to Jan now, and she's going to be doing the introduction of our speaker, whoever that is, and of course, praying us in as we move through the service and into the talk.
Okay. Thank you so much, TJ. It's so fabulous to have you here. You're our wonderful friend, and I remember the first time you walked into our center. And I remember it was either the first or second time that we went out to lunch and then over to Ace Hardware to figure out the paint. That was so amazing, that whole experience of recreating our spiritual center. So I want to share with you a little bit about TJ, and I have his newer bio in front of me. It's still not up to date, but it's closer. So TJ Woodward is a best-selling author, inspirational speaker, and revolutionary recovery expert who has helped countless people through his simple yet powerful teachings. He was given the honor of being ordained as an agape minister by Dr. Michael Beckwith, and is also the founding minister of Agape Bay Area in Oakland, which was the very first satellite community of the Agape International Spiritual Center in LA. TJ is a featured thought leader on wholehearted.org, along with Brene Brown, Marianne Williamson, Dr. Gabor Mate, and Mark Lundholm. He is also the creator of the Conscious Recovery Method, which is a groundbreaking and effective approach to viewing and treating addiction. TJ is also the author of the best-selling books, Conscious Being, Awakening to Your True Nature, Conscious Recovery, A Fresh Perspective on Addiction, and Conscious Creation, 5 Steps to Embracing the Life of Your Dreams, as well as the co-author of their accompanying workbooks. And that's a mouthful. And we have read them all and done book studies on 2 of them. So we're right with you, following you all the way. His website is www.tjwoodward.com. And like I said, we are just so, delighted, thrilled, feeling very, very deep gratitude for you being here, TJ. And so I would like to bring us in together now into a state of deep appreciation. And I'd like to pray us into the listening to his presentation. So I invite you now into this moment of prayer, a moment to turn within and to center into our truth, which is the spiritual image and the likeness of God. We rest in the awareness that there is only one life, the divine life force, the power and the presence of source energy. I recognize the beauty and splendor all around me, and I am grateful, so very grateful for this community where we gather together as one heart, and for the team that works together to participate in the divine order of creating our beautiful Sunday morning experience. I bless TJ and I'm so grateful that he is willing to be the instrument that Spirit uses to share with us this morning. I bless this Sunday experience and I rest in the peace that this prayer touches all hearts. I release this word, knowing that it is done, and so it is.
And so it is.
Thank you, TJ.
Wow. Thank you, Jan, so much. I feel so filled up already with so much love that this service has already brought. And before I start my talk, I want to remind you that Jan is going to be reading the comments and the questions. We always love participation. So after the talk, Jan will be asking any questions you have, any comments. I really love that collaborative experience that is the Sunday experience at Inspired Living Center in Brentwood, which is really different than having someone stand up and talk. This is something that we really love doing, and that is being in conversation. It's vitally important to me because I think the old paradigm of the teacher and the student is dissolving before our eyes. Wow, how amazing and sometimes disorienting. In other words, I don't have any answers, but boy, do I have some questions for us this morning. My talk title is The Freedom of Spirit. And I want to start by acknowledging an Indian proverb that says we're a house with 4 rooms: physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. I like acronyms because I like my mind to be able to remember things very easily. So pies, imagining that the pies are these different rooms that we can live in and live from. And what I want to really focus on today is that we can absolutely acknowledge all of those rooms, really honor all those different rooms, and recognize that we can ask the question, what gets created when I live in each of these different rooms? Nikola Tesla said something that I think is profound. And what he offered is very simple. The moment we start studying non-physical phenomenon, we will make more advances in a decade than we did in the previous hundreds of years. Hundreds of years. And we are at a remarkable time in the evolution of human consciousness. And it might appear that things are falling apart in some ways, or crumbling, or that fear is a part of our culture and our society. And that is true. And there's also a greater reality. And that greater reality is as we shift our awareness from only focusing on the physical and start to look at the metaphysical, or the beyond the physical, which includes the intellectual, emotional, and spiritual, we can actually shift our awareness while honoring what's happening in the world, but not being a victim to what is happening in the world. And this is really huge. What Ron offered us today in the reading from Eckhart Tolle is powerful. And I'm going to be paraphrasing this because that was the first time I heard the reading. But Eckhart Tolle is talking about the illusion of ego. He doesn't ever say there's something fundamentally wrong with the ego. And what is the ego? Let's take a moment with that, because in a lot of spiritual circles, it has seemed to be true that we have wanted to get rid of the ego. But I actually don't think the intention is to be rid of the ego. The intention is actually, in my experience, to honor all parts of ourself, or the seeming parts of ourself, whether we call it the physical reality or the ego. So let's talk about it for a moment. The ego is simply the personality, the collection of thoughts, ideas, and beliefs we have about the world. We could say it's actually our physical body as well, what we can see, what we can touch, what we can taste, what we can experience with the 5 senses. This is what lives in physical reality. Nothing wrong with that, nothing bad about that. Many of us have been conditioned to have polarized thinking. You know, we have been using the term we are in a polarized society, or our country, talking about the United States, is polarized. And I actually don't think that's true. I think that we could point to evidence to support that. What I think is actually true is that we have been conditioned to have polarized thinking. We have been conditioned to look at the world through the lens of good, bad, right, and wrong. All of that lives in the ego, and all of it It's not that we want to pretend that it's not happening. We can recognize that it is an experience, but only a small part of the experience. And I love what Asher said earlier about the choice of what we focus on. It's not that we need to be rid of the ego, or that the ego is bad or wrong, or that my ideas or my thoughts or my beliefs are bad or wrong. It's just exploring through curiosity what gets created when I live from and as these different rooms or these different levels of awareness. What gets created when I believe I am my opinions? What gets created when I believe I am my beliefs or my ideas about myself and the world? And what else is possible? And what is my choice? And going back to what Tesla said about non-physical phenomenon, be with that for a moment. Really lean into that as my invitation for you this morning. What might that mean? What might it mean for me to start studying or measuring non-physical phenomenon? Perhaps it's an emotion. It's the sense of love that I feel when I'm around a community where there's this frequency or this vibration of love. Perhaps it is moving beyond just the physical or the five senses and start to look at a greater possibility. We are living in a time where we are being literally fed a news cycle that's now 24/7. If you're of a certain age, we didn't have the news 24/7. We had the newspaper. We could pull out at any time and read the news. But we had, what was it, the 6 o'clock news, the 11 o'clock news? But now it's constant. We have social media. We have new 24-hour news channels that we can turn on and we can hear the stories. What are the stories that are primarily being delivered on the news? Or as my friend Michael Beckwith says, it's not the news, it's the olds. It's the same old story of division, of separation, and of fear. And again, I want to be clear, we're not making that wrong or bad, because that's actually just living in the ego paradigm. There's something wrong with the way the news is reporting. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is what gets created when I focus on that? What gets created when I actually have that being fed to my consciousness several hours a day, even several minutes a day? And what gets created when I unplug from that and start to look at non-physical phenomenon? Spirit. What is spirit? The essence of who and what we are. If it's true that we came into the world as a perfect expression of the one presence and the one power, and many New Thought teachings, that's the foundational principle, that there is one presence and one power, and then each of us is a perfect expression of that. Now that sounds really great, doesn't it? I'm a perfect expression of source energy. But for a moment, I want to invite you to be curious about that, to actually lean into that and ask yourself, what gets created when I know that? When I know that I'm a particle of God energy, of source energy, of essential beingness, all these words we use for divinity, for source. What happens when I really know that? And then what am I called to be or to do in the world? Wow. Lean into that for a moment. I'm not my thoughts and opinions. I'm not going to live in the paradigm of what I can see, touch, and taste. I'm going to honor that and recognize that as part of the experience. And as a master teacher, over 2,000 years brought us to be in the world, but not of the world. To be of the world is to believe that the world has power over me. And we're talking about freedom today. What is freedom? I think about Nelson Mandela, who was in prison for all those years. I think about honoring Martin Luther King, whose birthday we celebrate tomorrow, who really stood for freedom. Now, I didn't have the honor of meeting Martin Luther King in person, but what's great is his teachings and his legacy live on. And he was someone who stood for freedom, not against. Now, does that mean that he didn't speak to what he saw in the world with the division and the ism, the racism? He did speak to that, but he spoke to it from a place of a greater reality, a greater knowing that it is possible for us to move beyond the divisions. It is possible for us to live beyond the appearances, the color of our skin, our age, our religion, our lack of religion, all the ways the ego uses what's happening in the world to divide. The ego is an important part of our psyche, is an important part of who and what we are. Without the ego, without the mind, I wouldn't be standing here talking. But let's back up a little. This idea of separation and of otherness came from survival. Early in the evolution, we lived in caves, and if we went outside, we might get eaten. So I need to constantly be looking at what's safe and what's dangerous. And then we would build tribes to protect ourselves from what was happening. And yes, that's the animalistic instinct of protection and of safety. And with that animalistic perspective of safety, what gets also created is the other. And then we get conditioned to believe that we need to always look at who and what is safe and who and what is not safe. And we find our people to protect ourselves from the seeming or perceived other. And so if we're going to move beyond the physical, because in the physical, we are animals, let's name it. Right? We are animals, we must eat to survive. And part of that survival mechanism, the reptilian brain, is always looking for who's safe and what is safe. Nothing wrong with that. And it's extremely limited. Because if we want to only live in the animalistic realm of reality, we are going to stay stuck in constantly needing to create safety in our lives, security in our lives. And with that knowing, with that only living in the physical, we're going to naturally create an other. That group isn't safe. That group is wrong. This group is right. Yes, we do have physical reality, but most of us at this point aren't really afraid that we're going to be eaten when we walk out of our homes. We have evolved now, and we are evolving now to recognize, yes, we have that, but it's not the ultimate truth of who and what we are. That we have evolved into recognizing that we have an intellect, we have emotions, and we have a spiritual essence that is also included in the totality of what we call human. And what we call human is changing and evolving constantly. And so we have a choice at this moment, this profound moment in human history, where there are forces, and I don't mean evil or good, I mean there are forces in consciousness. There's a collective consciousness right now that we must be afraid. And perhaps we've moved back into focusing primarily on the physical. And so what I'm inviting for us today in this conversation of the freedom of spirit is to recognize that I have a body, but I'm not my body. I have thoughts, but I'm not my thoughts. I have emotions, but I'm not my emotions. All of that is part of my experience. And the greater reality, or maybe the greatest reality, is that as a spiritual being, I am free. And that freedom is not contingent on what I hear on CNN or Fox or what I see on Facebook or Instagram. That freedom of spirit needs nothing, because essentially we are whole, we are complete, we are spiritual essence. Knowing that allows me then to integrate the physical, the intellectual, and the emotional. This is not about rejecting, this is about including. What gets created when I shift from that paradigm of the reptilian brain of I must protect myself into a more expansive awareness of curiosity, of openness? As we dedicate ourselves to living as spirit through spiritual practice, we connect very deeply with our essential beingness. And then we can take a look at all the ways that we have believed that that's not who and what we are. Because the truth is, spirituality is not about a destination. It's about a recognition of who and what we are. And because we dedicate ourselves to spending time in the silence and making a deeper connection, and it's not really a connection because we're never disconnected, it's recognizing a greater reality, recognizing that spiritual essence is always more powerful than what we can see in the world. In New Thought teachings, we call it ultimate and relative reality. And I want to speak for a moment about something that I see happening in the world. And I woke up one day with an awareness, and that awareness was fear, and the way fear is being propagated in some way is connected with our perspective, our point of view, and our relationship with what we call death. Because what we have been hearing, and what I've been hearing a lot of my friends saying is, oh my gosh, but I might die. So here's the great news. At least this far in the evolution of human consciousness, we are going to be leaving these bodies. So far, there might be a point that we evolve beyond that. I don't know. The fear of that, or the not acknowledging that, to me creates the greatest suffering. The greatest suffering is trying to work against that. And I say this often, and I'm going to say it again. We even use the term, she lost her battle with cancer. He lost his long fight with any virus or any disease that's out there. What if there's a greater reality? It doesn't mean that I don't acknowledge and honor if I feel sad when someone dies. What it does mean, though, is the paradigm that we have created collectively and unconsciously is, oh my gosh, we must not ever die. We must not ever acknowledge it. But there is a greater reality at hand here. And that reality is the spiritual beingness of who and what we are is eternal. Now, there are some that say that may be true and that may not be true. So my invitation for you is to ask yourself that question. Do I know that I'm an essential, eternal, infinite being? Do I recognize that I have this body, but I'm not my body? Yes, I care for it. I take care of it. Maybe I look at what is safe and what isn't. There's a fundamental difference in that than what we are seeing being played out in the world. And that is this idea of good, bad, right, wrong based on people's choices. And on one hand, I just want to acknowledge and be vulnerable that it's heartbreaking to me. In my emotional room, it's heartbreaking to me that we are pointing fingers and blaming. And blame is not bad. It's just a very low frequency. Blame creates more division. It solidifies the division. It creates the other. And then we find ourselves in these camps based on what we believe or what we think. And that is the dance of the human ego that has been around for thousands of years. And what I want to ask you in closing, and then we're going to open it up for conversation. What I want to ask you in closing is, what is your role in this right now? Is there a judgment you have about the choices of other people right now? What gets created when I have this judgment? What if I don't judge me for having judgment? What if I become curious about that? Wow, I wonder where I got that idea. I wonder where I got the idea that someone is wrong or bad or good or right based on their choices they're making, or which camp they live in, or whether they're wearing a piece of cloth on their face or not. And see, the human mind has been so conditioned to believe in right or wrong that this video could even get flagged for me saying that. We're in this now. This is where we're at. Collective consciousness tells us we must find our tribe, our people. Sometimes in spiritual community, we even use the term like-minded. I want to invite us into a greater paradigm, that we can move beyond that maybe we're not looking for like-minded people, maybe not even like-hearted people, but spiritual beings coming together to know a greater reality, regardless of what's happening in the world, regardless of what's happening in my families, in my life, regardless of what I see on the news or the energy I feel when I'm out in public. What if the greater reality is oneness, infinite beingness? What if we have chosen to be here right now in the midst of this, to be the beacon of spiritual essence? What would it create for me to say yes to that? To recognize that, as I said, I have a body, but I'm not my body. I have thoughts, but I'm not my thoughts. I have emotions, but I'm not my emotions. All of those are included in the totality of the spiritual experience. And in the midst of that, what I'm going to focus on today, the choice that I'm going to make, is to know that New Thought was founded with a knowing that we can heal, that we can bend toward wholeness, that we can be spiritual essence, that we are not the conditions of the world, that in the midst of that, we have not only a choice, but I would say a responsibility. So anyone who's watching right now, if you consider yourself a part of the New Thought movement, even if you don't even know what that means, well, what is that? Because it's not actually a new thought. It's a beingness. It's a call to action, but the action is spiritual action. To notice if I am for or against. To notice if that creates suffering, or as Eckhart Tolle said, to notice if that's an illusion. It's not the truth. The new paradigm is oneness, and we have been called. So I'm inviting you to say yes. And I'm going to invite you in this moment to move within for a moment. Check in with your heart space. Check in with that essential beingness. And ask yourself the question, am I willing to say yes? Am I willing to be the love that the world seems to want and need so desperately right now? Am I willing to be the light that I know I've come here to be? Am I willing to move beyond the illusion of thought, of separation, of division, of fear, and step into ultimate freedom? Freedom of spirit is a great knowing. It's not a thought. It's not a feeling. It's a great knowing. And so we are grateful that we've had this time together this morning to recognize, to recognize a greater reality. We all know this essentially. My hope is that my words have reminded you of this greater reality. Peace and blessings, everyone. I'm going to turn it over to Jan to see if there are any questions or comments. And I am so incredibly grateful for all of you right now.
Okay, there are some wonderful
guess there are.
questions. Gratitude, of course. And this is really exciting. I realize now how absolutely fluid Amy is in her ability to just move back and forth and to make sure that she catches all the comments and she's listening to what you say and responding to it. It's amazing. Anyway, here we go. So Nancy, thank you to me for the prayer, bringing us into TJ's sharing, and I appreciate that. Robin says, thanks for the message, TJ, and for giving permission to honor ourselves, for giving us permission to honor ourselves. And Pat says, a spiritual being allows one to handle issues in the world by sending love and light and not being fearful.
Yes, thank you.
That was Pat. And then Pat has a question, TJ.
Great.
She says, would you go over the pieces, I think, of the pies and what they refer to, physical, etc.
Yeah, physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual, the 4 rooms. And I write about this in my book, Conscious Being, because I recognized that we have this framework of the 4 levels of consciousness, which we're not diving into completely. But at one point, I realized that these 4 rooms correlate with these levels of consciousness as well. And again, when we talk about consciousness, we're not talking about I graduate to some other level. It's all available at all moments. As a matter of fact, to me, the spiritual journey is about integrating, not rejecting. So I don't want to reject what's happening in the physical realm. I recognize that there are these different levels: physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. And so what I do, Pat, that I really like to do that helps me is when I notice a situation in my life, or maybe I even notice an internal situation, maybe I notice a little resistance, or maybe there's a fear thought, I check in with these 4 different rooms. Like if I'm only coming from the physical room, if I believe that reality is what I can see, touch, taste, and feel, what do I experience? What do I experience if I move into the intellectual or the emotional or the spiritual realm? Because, as I often say, life is a great experiment. So that's the framework.
Okay. That was very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan.
And I'm sure Pat says thank you. Okay. Karen says, I've heard that for years, TJ, but I just got it. And thank you so much for your talk. That was from Karen. And John says, yes, TJ, let's choose to rise to the truth of our spiritual nature and radiate love out into the fearful world.
Yes. Yeah. And
John?
isn't it interesting? And who was that said that?
John Shin.
Okay, John Shen, thank you. Yeah, John, I really appreciate that, because sometimes, isn't it amazing? I remember talking to a minister friend of mine saying, if you have your own community, you can be speaking as 50 times a year. And we end up really saying the same message, because the simplest message is the most powerful, right? The simplest message to me is spirit is who and what we are. And as I be that, that's not grammatically correct. Hopefully Reverend Jones not watching, or Jan's here. She's in English. Oh dear. But who I be in the world is so powerful. And when I know that, and when I shift from wanting to receive from the world to wanting to radiate, I remember at one point we were doing this Saturday morning group we used to do years ago. And we called it the Authenticity Group, and we met every Saturday, and something emerged in the conversation that the very idea of giving and receiving is actually a dualistic point of view, right? I'm going to give you this, I'm going to receive this from you. And when I really understood that, not intellectually, but when I really got that deep in my soul, oh, this isn't about giving and receiving. This is really about being that frequency and then watching what happens in the world. And it's just a really different way of living. So that's a really long way of saying, John, thank you for saying it with such clarity and simplicity that's so powerful.
Okay, John had another comment too. He said, love in our words, love in our music, love in our relationships, love in the way we walk through this life.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And so if you have more questions, we have a little bit more time. And so put your questions in the chat. I think I've got this, thanks to Robin sitting here next to me with her
chat, doing great,
with her chat open. And let's see. Karen says, TJ, I appreciate that you bring up how when let's see, let me see what that is again. TJ, I appreciate that you bring up how when we go into the silence, we can often see our true essence, non-duality, our oneness.
Right. And
that was Katie. Sorry, that was Katie.
Oh, Katie. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Katie. I really, for me, the spiritual journey seems to continue to be twofold. One, making that connection, which again is not really making a connection, but it's acknowledging the oneness. It's acknowledging my spiritual essence. It's spending time developing a relationship with that. And then the second part of the spiritual journey is then starting to question everything. I think the quote that I put either yesterday or today is, freedom is questioning every point of view I've ever had, right? Because it's not that there's a right thought or a wrong thought. It's, what does this thought create? What does this point of view create? And the more, as you said so beautifully, Katie, the more I recognize my essential beingness, the easier it is for me to question my points of view. Sometimes it's funny to me. Oh my gosh, I've been carrying around this point of view for all these years, and I've been seeing it everywhere, right? Because we know we're the projector. And so the more we concretize, my favorite word, concretize the relationship with the ultimate self, the easier it is for me to wear it like a loose garment, right? Like, oh, wow, look at me having that opinion. Because my mind has bazillions of opinions every day. And aren't they interesting? Isn't it interesting that I'm feeling that? Isn't it interesting that I'm thinking that? And when I move into the curiosity, wow, is it a game changer? Wow.
We love your openness and vulnerability, TJ.
Thank you, Jan.
Absolutely love that. So let's see, Pat, wait a minute. We got to go back here. Dave says, TJ, you always reheart me to choose awareness, to come out of my aimless ego.
Mm.
I need these reminders more than I care to admit. Thank you for the blessing you are to me, our community, and to the world. Gratitude and appreciation.
Wow, I love that, because that's, to me, that's why we have community. Because on one day, I might really be anchored in spirit, like, oh, I know my essential beingness. And then I may wake up one day and think, God, no, it may not be conscious, but I believe I'm my thoughts, and thoughts are great, but they're always limited in some way, right? They're always limited in some way, because that's what thoughts are. It's like trying to make sense of something. And so I really appreciate that you use that term remind, and I think you said reheart, right?
Mhm.
Respirit, because that's really the truth. We're not here to teach. No one's here to teach. We're here to speak. I often refer to Michael Beckwith because I love the way he frames things in his own unique way. And he says, we're not here to change the world. We're here to serve the new paradigm. And when we're coming from and living from that place of oneness, of beingness, it's a felt sense we have, not an emotional felt sense. It's a recognition. It's like, oh, that feels like truth. And all of us need, at least the humans I've met, all need a reminder some days. And I used to think, oh gosh, I can't believe. Someone said to me once, did it really take you until 40 years to figure that out? Why,
Yeah.
yes, it did. And I can forget it in 15 minutes and then be reminded. And I think that's the greatest reason we have spiritual community.
It's interesting because I've been thinking the same thing lately. Wow, when did I start this journey? It's been a long time, and now I'm circling back to it, rehearting, as Dave. I love that, what Dave said. Yeah. Okay, I'm just looking. Can you see my picture? In the window is coming there's this amazing star behind me, this golden sunlight star, beautiful bright star.
Beautiful.
Anyway, let's see, a couple more comments. Pat says the pies also refer to the stages we go through as a person: physical as a baby, intellectual as we are in school, emotional as we are learning as a teen, spiritual as we discover something only as a senior, sometimes only as a senior, that we are spiritual beings.
Yes.
Thank you, Pat, for that reminder and connection to the stages of our life as well.
And it's interesting. I remember I'm sitting with, we come in as spiritual beings, and then we have a physical incarnation. And some of us actually can remember our birth. I know people that can remember it. I'm not one of those people, at least I'm not aware of it. But can you imagine the experience of like being a spiritual being, and then suddenly you're in this little body, boom, right? It's like an instant, like, oh, I'm this physical being. And when we talk to really young people, and so, yes, I'm totally in agreement, Pat, is what I'm saying. And I also am curious about, like, maybe we go from spiritual and then we're in this body, and we get taught that we're our physical body. It's all very interesting to me. I love that you brought that in, because it's something for me to sit with like, what does it mean to be a physical incarnation, right? What does it mean to, some believe we choose our bodies, and some believe we choose to come to planet Earth. When I was a little kid, before this got taught out of me, I pondered consciousness, and I pondered why planet Earth seemed so dense, right? War, sexism. I remember hearing men just say these horrific things about women, and I would go in my room and cry. I literally, like, oh, how, or hearing people saying, like, I grew up around a lot of racism. I was born in 1965 in a small town in Indiana. If I thought I was going to escape hearing racist thoughts, they were all around me. And I remember them. It was heartbreaking to me. So some of us believe we chose to be here for the evolution of spirituality, the evolution of our souls. Maybe we evolved to other planets. It's all very exciting, but sometimes I think the mind wants to figure that out for safety, and I think that religion, although it is quite often well-intended, is trying to figure out something and create a series of beliefs. And It's not about beliefs. I remember when I started my spiritual community, someone said, well, what are the core beliefs of awakened living? I don't want to have core beliefs. But anyway, that's maybe a conversation for a different time.
Okay, well, let me see there. I think there's a time for a couple more. Let's see, Kathy says, TJ, sometimes I feel that the discussion of fear is oversimplified. I have been dismissed for requesting consideration for the physically vulnerable amongst us. Consideration is not fear. Asking for that piece of cloth to protect the vulnerable is not fear. It's consideration and love.
Yeah, and it can be, right? And it can be fear, right? So it's for me, it's never this or that. It's always this and that. And it can be that, right? And it can be an opportunity for us to explore what that means to us, right? And we all have a different point of view. If we were to shift from talking about spirit right now to talking about our opinions, we would find plenty of reasons for all of us to disagree. And it doesn't matter what the topic is, right? I mean, in Conscious Being, my first book, I wrote about blue chair, green chair, and it came from a very real conversation. Unity San Francisco, which I was a part of, we had these chairs that were kind of a teal color. And I remember literally being witness to people arguing. These two people were deeply entrenched, whether it was blue or green. And I thought, wow, this is the conversation. Is it blue or green? And I want to be clear, Kathy, I'm not trying to diminish what you're talking about. I realize what you're talking about is more important than whether the chair is blue or green. And it does show how our mind is. For me, and this is only for me, I believe, or see how I went into I believe, isn't that interesting? My experience has shown me that when I believe I am my opinions, it causes division. And when I actually speak from the heart and have a conversation with someone and we can question together, I remember being in a conversation with someone and he said, oh, you're one of those, you have to meet in the middle people. And no, I'm not talking about meeting in the middle. I'm recognizing that every point of view is 100% valid. Wow, what might change if I became curious about how everyone's point of view was valid, rather than, no, this one, because I posted a few days ago, and I know we're almost at time here, but I posted a few days ago, would you rather be at peace or happy? And someone, or free, I said freedom or peace, which, it's always, I don't remember what it said, but it was, do you want to be at peace or be happy? And someone said, I want to, sometimes being right causes lack of peace, and sometimes that's important. It's not always about being at peace. And so what he was talking about was in the external realm. Yeah, sometimes discord can create evolution. We see that, right? People standing, for example, it's not okay for this to be happening. I'm going to stand in a greater reality. But we're talking about an inner experience of peace. And for me, when I'm deeply entrenched in that I think I'm right, I suffer. And I don't actually think it creates connection. So for me, and I keep saying for me because I'm kind of cautious actually, because our culture now with cancel culture and opinionating, if I say something that can be perceived to be divisive, it's just interesting. I'll put it that way. What I want to be involved in and what I want to stand for is honoring each other and actually having a deeper conversation, not necessarily that I need to change my opinion with you two, but to be in a conversation that connects. That was a very long answer.
Thank you. And I know Kathy thanks you as well. So there are two more comments and I think our time is up. So let me just read them and then maybe we can carry them on over into the workshop. So when I finish reading the comments, remind us about your workshop, okay? And then we'll end with the prayer, the prayer.
Yeah.
So Dave says, bringing up the question of when did you begin your spiritual awareness journey? now, now my answer is hopefully every new day.
Yes.
And Pat says, I can experience the sensations of being a baby, coming from unconditional to conditional love, depending on someone else now for my survival needs, et cetera, et cetera. Deep conditioning and how, if I ever get stuck in looking to others for my needs.
Mm.
Yeah, so that bringing that back to our, our responsibility.
Yes.
Taking responsibility, right? So thank you everyone for your comments. I appreciate it. It was pretty seamless, not too bad for a first go around, right, TJ?
I thought it was
You did it.
absolutely perfect.
Okay, so why don't you share your workshop and then we'll close.
Absolutely. Yeah, the workshop is going to be looking at what is actually needed in order for us to move from fear to freedom. And I love many of the comments. And I think based on what those comments are, I think that's what we're going to be exploring in the workshop. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to turn it back to Jan for our closing prayer.
Right. And before we do the prayer, I would like to invite you, if you've been inspired, if you're grateful and you've been inspired by our community, by our service today, by who we are and what we do and share, and how we carry on in the world, I invite you to go to our website and to it's called Ways to Give, and contribute to our community. We are 100%. Our contributions is 100% of the way we maintain and sustain ourselves. So your contributions are always welcome. And with that, you have on the screen the prayer of divine awakening. And if you have your card, you can pull it up too. You got it in the mail before the new year, the prayer of divine awakening. So I would invite you to center yourself and join me in saying the prayer of divine awakening. It's a new day, a beautiful day, a new beginning. I embrace this day with new eyes, an open heart, and expansive mind. I choose my vibrational frequency, deliberately and consciously harmonizing with life's events. I am receptive to source energy, divine guidance, and wisdom available to me at all times. I commit to serve unconditional love fully and completely. I move forward in a state of appreciation, an extension of the one magnificent power and presence. I am sovereign, whole, and free, claiming dominion over my life as I go in peace and awaken to my divinity. And so it is. Isn't that a wonderful prayer? Whoa, okay. We will see you on the other side on the Zoom
everyone.
link. Bye-bye.